Hey, friends, we are going live here for a quick devotion. And just going to wait a couple minutes to see if some people jump on here. If not, we'll go ahead. But yeah, just hanging out here for a moment. Good afternoon. It's about 3:30 here on May 11th. Right? It's amazing. It's already May 11th, and I don't know about you, but this last couple months have gone by so fast. Right? Last few weeks. What's up, Kirk? How you doing? Good to see you. I hope that your day is going well. But yeah, this last month has gone by really, really fast for me. And it's all of a sudden here. It seems that in some instances, not much has happened in life. But the truth of the matter is that things have just gone, and they've gone quickly, and we've been moving along, and the calendar days just keep on moving. And so hopefully, if you're like me, you've been using this time hopefully in a good way. I've been really, really encouraged over the last couple weeks of conversations that I've had with people, especially dealing with who we are as a people, as a church, reevaluating those kinds of things, understanding the need to reach out and connect with each other. And I know that we could always do that better. I know I could do that better. And I know that we can as a whole. The time just goes on. And if you're anything like me, the time that you get on a phone with somebody, those seem to be lasting longer and longer, especially over the last couple of years where we've kind of gotten away from speaking on the phone to doing things like texting and Snapchat and posting things through social media, and that being the way that we communicate with each other. Over the last couple of weeks, my phone calls with people have been deeper and have lasted much longer. And so if that's the same way with you, man, don't take that as a bad thing. Use that and understand that those are things that we need. We need to have that relationship with each other. It's vital for us to continue to have that and to move on for not just growth of ourselves, but growth in those relationships. They are something that we need. And so, but as we talk about that, right, just begin moving on. I want to remind you that on our website, at holtchristian.org, and if you wanted to go right to it, just hit /devoted. You will see that there are devotions that we've been doing over these last few weeks, just to kind of help us navigate those waters of what does it mean to become fully devoted to Jesus? How do we grow in that relationship? How do we become devoted more deeply to him? And we started off by saying it's love, right? If we love somebody, then that devotion begins to be deeper. We stick together with love, right? And we noticed that Jesus asked Peter one question: "Do you love me?" And he asked him that 3 times. And I wonder if sometimes we need to hear that as well. That instead of that long list of things that maybe we put in that we have to do in order to accomplish God's favor upon us, maybe the one thing that Jesus asks us more than anything else is, "Do you love me?" And that with that love, we'll begin to develop some other traits and things in our life. But first, we have to understand that God loves us, that Jesus loves us, and that his response that he wants from us from that is just to simply love him back. And then we talk about waiting, right? To be able to wait for whatever that next instruction is. Right? Where so often we live in a world where we want everything right now. And hopefully we've learned a little bit over these last few weeks to slow down a little bit. That some of the things that we thought were so important maybe are not so much, and that our lives can be enriched and enhanced by waiting a little bit more. And so waiting and living inside of that relationship. And I think that happens not just with our relationship with God, but with our relationship with our families as well. If we can wait just a little bit longer, just kind of settle in and exist inside of that relationship, that something better is going to come along. And I think what really happens is our devotion to each other. That's when we really get to know each other. And the next thing we said is the trust, right? Because Jesus said, "Wait here" to his disciples when he was ascending into heaven. He said, "Wait here in Jerusalem, and I'm going to send you power. I'm going to send you the Holy Spirit." And he promised the power, right? And so I think the big thing we have to trust is that Jesus is going to do the things that he says he's going to do. Right? God is more than capable to take care of the things that he needs to take care of. And I like to say this way, at least for me, I like to be reminded that in the places that I fall short, God is more than capable to fill that gap. And I just have to trust him, right? And so beginning to trust him more and more that he's going to do what he's going to do. And my role is, if I become devoted to him, is to simply trust that. But yesterday we started a new thing. Right? And so these are not necessarily steps that you have to get each one right in order to move on to the next one. More like ingredients to pour into our lives so that we can hopefully come out a product of being a person who is devoted to Jesus, right? And so the next thing is to see, right? And in my devotion that I wrote down today, I kind of wrote down that I remember some times when I went to see somebody. And you can throw some in the comments if you want to, but have you ever went to go, or have you ever gone to see someone with that specific intent that, hey, this is somebody that I might not ever get an opportunity to see again, and today I want to go see them. And so if that's the case, write it down in the chat here of somebody that you went to go see, right? You wanted to see them. And looking back, I remember two people that in my life that I went to see in the middle of large crowds. One of them was Queen Elizabeth. Right? And so when I was, I don't know, I probably was 7 years old or so, Queen Elizabeth came to San Diego, and that's where I was living at the time. And if I remember, my memory of that were large crowds, her coming on a boat and nothing else. Here's the truth, is I don't even remember if I saw her. I remember the crowds. I remember the commotion. I remember the energy leading up to it. I don't remember seeing her. And the truth of the matter is that I think there was a lot of people who looked upon the Queen, but it didn't really change their life at all. Right? There wasn't this big interaction. And while there was so much emphasis and priority placed on going to see her, there wasn't this big change of life because of it. At least not that I know of. And for me, it wasn't. Right? I was a long ways separated from her, both in stature, right, age of who I was, right. So she came by, and a lot of people just simply got a glimpse, and there it went. And then I remember as I got older, the first presidential election that I was going to get to vote in was Clinton's re-election campaign. Right? And so it was at 1996. I was going to get to vote for the first time for a president. It was the first time that I was going to be eligible to vote. Right. I wasn't 18 yet when he ran his first campaign, and so I was going to be eligible to vote for that one. Here's the truth: is that I don't think I was very involved in politics then. I know probably that's not a thing. I know I wasn't, but it was a big deal to me to hear that President Clinton on his campaign trail was going to be coming through the city that I was living in then, which was Battle Creek, Michigan. And at that time, I was maybe 20 years old, an apprentice on my way to becoming a journeyman electrician. And I got to be honest, I don't know what compelled me to say I'm going to go see this, other than the fact that I remember my mom always saying, hey, when you need to watch this at different moments of time. She said, this is history, and you need to remember it. You're going to want to remember this. And so part of that thinking in me is, hey, there's somebody who's important that's coming through. I'm going to take a moment of my life, of my time, to go and see them. And so I can remember that a train came by. I remember him being out of the back of that train and it stopping for a moment and him saying something. I have no idea what he said, but what I remember more than anything else was the crowds. And the truth of the matter is that I was a long ways away from President Clinton. And not just in proximity because of the crowd that was between him and me, but also because of my stature in life. He was kind of at that age where he was one more campaign, right? One more term of presidency, and it was off to golden sunset for him. It may be a bad term of use, but right, that was his ambition probably, was to become president. And after 2 terms, that's it. You go on to making speeches and everything else. He was at the top, at the end, while I was just an apprentice at the very beginning of what I thought was going to be my career for the rest of my life. Now, while I eventually became an electrician, I know that my life has changed quite a bit from there. But it didn't change because I stopped to see President Clinton. Well, I was a long, long ways away from him, and there wasn't a lot that I could do to get myself any closer. I wasn't of the right stature. I wasn't of the right groups. I wasn't the right thing. And the truth of the matter is that both with Queen Elizabeth and with President Clinton, I got to look upon them. I got to have a glimpse at them, but I didn't really see them in the fact of more than what they were allowing us to visualize. That brief moment. I think seeing somebody really actually is when you get to know them. If I could really see somebody, I get to know who they are. I know them by name. I know them by sight. I know them more than just whatever they're doing at that moment. I'm reminded of a story. It is found in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 19, and it starts off Luke 19. And it talks about Jesus as he's going into Jericho. And in Jericho, there's a man who has chosen a profession for himself as well that probably would have kept him a long, long ways away from the religious leaders, from those of high power in the Jewish society. But he wanted to see this man who was being touted as a great teacher, who was doing great things, some were calling the Messiah, some were calling just somebody who was doing some great things for the people, some were calling him a great teacher. Zacchaeus, right? This man who was living in Jericho at the time, decides he wants to catch a glimpse of it. And I don't know if it was because his mom told him to always make sure that he watched because he was going to be wanting to remember this moment, or if he really expected something to change in his life. And Zacchaeus realized really, really quick that he was a long, long ways away from Jesus. Right? The crowds that were there kept him from him. His stature in the society kept him away from him. His stature physically kept him away from him. He wasn't going to get close enough to really, really, really see Jesus. And so he climbs up onto a tree where maybe he can get a better look. Maybe if just a passing by would be enough to satisfy whatever urge was causing him to be there that day. But I think something really, really important happened. In fact, I know it did. Because Jesus stops when he gets to the tree. He looks up and he says, Zacchaeus, come down here. I'm going to your house today. Zacchaeus, come down here. Listen, I think it's really, really important because while Zacchaeus thought he was a long, long ways away from Jesus, Jesus was never that far away from Zacchaeus. Here's what I mean by that. Jesus saw Zacchaeus. He didn't just see him in his position up in the tree. He saw Zacchaeus for who he was. Later on in that, he ends up going to Zacchaeus' house, and Zacchaeus has this conversation with him that we only get a little glimpse of. But part of it, because Jesus looks up at Zacchaeus and calls him down, he says, basically letting him know, Zacchaeus, you don't just see me, but I also see you. Zacchaeus, he comes down and Jesus has this conversation with him, and that moment of where Zacchaeus realizes that Jesus sees him, not just his choices of pursuing a profession that would keep him away from most everybody else, but he sees him as one of the lost sheep of Israel, sees him as somebody who needs Jesus. Jesus says, I'm coming to your house, and we're going to get to know each other. You're going to get to see me. Zacchaeus sees Jesus, and here's what's amazing, is that while over the last few weeks I'm saying that there's we might place too much emphasis on actions more than that relationship, here's why. And Zacchaeus begins to pour that out. He says, if I've wronged anybody, I'm going to pay them back. I'm going to make sure that I make up for all of the wrongs that I've done. Everybody else looked and said, how come Jesus is hanging out with that guy? And I think it's because they never really got to see Jesus in the same way that Zacchaeus did that day. And my question is, have you seen Jesus? Have you seen Jesus? Because if you have, then it's going to change everything. And so my hope for us today is that we begin to really understand two things. One, that Jesus sees us. And it doesn't matter what we've done or where we've been or what matters is that we understand that Jesus sees us. If I want to become more devoted to Jesus, I have to understand that he desires to be in that relationship with me as well. And number two, that Jesus wants us to be able to see him. Not just our thoughts of what he is or what he's going to do or his rules or regulations, but to actually see him. That grace and truth that came down from heaven to be poured out all upon us, to say salvation is coming to you today. Salvation that brings you back into society. Salvation that brings you back brings you out of loneliness. A salvation that may pull you away from an addiction. A salvation that only Jesus can bring. Listen, not just for later in the afterlife, that will come as well, but also for today. And so maybe, just maybe, it's time for us to slow down a little bit so that we can get a better glimpse of Jesus. A better glimpse of who he is. And if you want to know how to do that, maybe it starts by opening up a Bible. Maybe it starts by shooting me a message or one of your friends a message that say, I just want to talk about Jesus. What has he done in your life? How does that happen? How do I get to see him more clearly? Maybe today's the day you climb up in a tree and hear Jesus calling. I'm coming to your house. I'm coming to you. Maybe today's the first time in your life that Jesus calls you out by name. But I pray that we're not just going to look at somebody. We're not just going to look at Jesus so that we say we saw him one time. We're going to see him and see him so much that we dive into a relationship with him. Right? Hey, I hope that you guys are having a safe time at home. That you're I don't know, building some patterns and some things in your life that are going to be a positive for when we begin seeing things open back up more wholly. I know that some things are beginning to open already. Good news for the day. Hey, I don't know if you know this or not, but Sweet Sensations, for those of us in the Holt area, Sweet Sensations is starting back up with their tour of the menu, which means half off on Mondays of one particular item. And if you don't know, you can always look at their social media pages on Instagram and Facebook, and they will post that a few days before. But good news for me is that my post-dinner treat is going, and maybe even pre-dinner, maybe right as soon as I get off of here, is going to be a turtle parfait from them for half price. So if you get there, maybe I'll see you. We'll do a non-contacting high five, but maybe this is also our encouragement. Make sure you're high five this week. Contact 5 people and let them know that you're thinking of them. All right. God bless you. I love you guys. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.